Hello, welcome back to our bookshop in Tring. I'm Ben Morehouse. So we've got another author interview, a bit of a special occasion this time. We're speaking to Millie Johnson. She won the Lifetime Achievement Award at this year's Romantic Novelist Association Awards, which was shortly before lockdown. And she's got a new book out today. I'm saying that today because we're publishing the video on the interview on publishing day. So My One True North is her new book, and she's in conversation with fellow author Jules Wake.
Thank you, Ben, and welcome, Millie. It's lovely to see you. The last time I saw you was in a bar in a very swanky hotel in London. I think we were swigging celebratory gin and tonics because you just picked up the Romantic Novelists Association's Outstanding Achievement Award. And I have to say congratulations again because it's well deserved. But also you brought the house down with your speech, which was just fantastic.
That was because all I could hear was silence. And I thought, I'm going to walk off to tumbleweed here. And there was a point in the speech where I flicked forward and I thought, one of those freeze frame moments where your brain is going, look, just cut to the end and walk off before the tomatoes start. And I genuinely wasn't expecting the reception I got for that. It was wonderful. It was stuff of dreams, you know. Lovely.
I think the reason there was silence because everyone was hanging on every word you wrote because it was a beautiful speech, and you can look it up on the internet. It's out there because it was in the bookseller. But one of the things that really struck me, I write romances nowhere near as well as you do, but it is the poor relation in the industry. Let's face it, we're derided and people turn their noses up quite often. But you made a very impassioned speech, and especially in these times when we've all been sort of locked away from our loved ones. Why do you think writing romance is so important?
Well, it is, isn't it? It's the stuff that people turn to, I think. I mean, we all get the letters, as I said in the speech. We all get these letters from people that say, you know, you helped me get through this. I needed you in this. I thank you very much for helping me get through this. And I turned to books when I felt rubbish. I was hooked up to a chemo drip. You took me away from it all. And the importance of these books is astronomical. I'm not taking that away from any other genre because we know how it feels and we don't want to be like that. But I would put my money on the fact that we get more letters than anybody else. And of course we've got this pandemic now and the letters are just getting thicker and thicker, you know, from people saying, you know, I'm really worried about it and I'm stressing and thank you very much. I've lost myself in one of your books. And it's not just me, it's all of us, you know. And just because it's got that romance tag on it, for somehow that seems to denigrate it. But you know, it doesn't denigrate it if it's written by a Russian bloke that was about 20, 30, 40 years ago, does it? I just don't know where this prejudice starts or has started, and it keeps carrying on. It's a cheap insult just because a book is about the thing that most books in classic literature are all about. But if we write it now, set in contemporary times, somehow that reduces it. I don't understand it.
Neither do I, and it certainly doesn't reduce your fans' love of your work. I read My One True North, in fact, today, and most authors, we get reviews from people, and they vary, but yours, you've got a 95% 5-star rating from your fans, which to me says everything. I don't know any other books that get that sort of reception from their readers, so you really are giving them what they want, and what you're writing they absolutely love. So I just wanted to say that because I have read that book. Have you got a copy? Because I don't have a copy to show the viewers. Sorry, I can see a stack of them behind you.
I've got, yes, with my Oscar, that is not really. My other half got it from a car boot sale. But just in case any Americans are looking, you know, and I've turned my book into a film. That's from a film that I had earlier. My One True North, it's out in paper. The paperback is coming out. I've lost it all to cot with dates. I think it's about a week on Thursday. So this is the paperback that will be coming out in shops and supermarkets, all good bookshops, as we say, and supermarkets in a week and a half. Very excited about it. You know, it's second wave of books. You know.
So is it out in hardback at the moment?
It's out in hardback at the moment, but I imagine now that anybody who's wanted to buy it will probably be hanging on for the paperbacks. A lot of people kind of will write to me and say, I'm waiting because otherwise I'll spoil all my shelf. I don't want another big one sticking out. So they'll wait for the paperback. The hardback's gone phenomenally. But I do have people who want the paperback because, you know, a lot of people find hardbacks a little bit harder to hold, I think.
Yeah, they're a bit unwieldy.
Yes. And of course, well, obviously I've missed the ones that don't take the hardback on holiday because it takes half the suitcase up. But we do have our hardback people and we do have our paperback. And some lovely people buy the hardback because they can't wait and then want the paperback for their shelf. So I'm relying on those to come to the top.
So My One True North is such a lovely story, although I was a little bit anxious about it when I first started reading it because it was, or listening, it was in the pandemic and it's about grief. And I thought, oh, this is going to be very sad. But it was a real mix of happiness, joy, some sad bits. So can you tell the viewers a little bit about the story? Because
yes, of course, yes. If you're going to write about grief, or a big heavy subject, you have to have that counterbalance of a lot of lightness. If it was on a seesaw, I would make sure that if grief was on this side and joy was on this, that it was really weighing down on this side. So I didn't want anybody to be put off by the fact it was about two young people who had lost their partner in similar circumstances. And the 6-month time lapse has gone, but they are still stuck like flies in aspect in this grief. They cannot move on. They've gone back to work thinking they were okay. Pete is a fireman, Laurie is a solicitor, and both on either side, their respective friends have said, we can see that you need some help. You're struggling on, you're trying to get, but you need some interference here. So they both are recommended to agree. They don't want to go and sit in a counsellor's office and have to pack their grief up after half an hour. But they are both recommended to this little tea and cake shop, which turns up in another of my books. It's an old pensioner that runs it. And they both go and they both think, oh God, what have we signed up for? You know, it's full of like pensioners and really strange people, you know, little motley bunch. But it works its magic on them. They go, they say they're not going again. They do go again. They find common denominators between them, Pete and Laurie, and they realise that there's a friendship building here, and then it turns into something more that they're quite reticent to follow because they've all been told, you know, that it might be that you're on the rebound and you're vulnerable, etc. But they know it's the real thing. But what I wanted to do within this book was have the factors that push them together in the first place be the things that pull them apart. And then I have to try and get them back together again in a feasible way. So, I mean, you'll know yourself as authors, sometimes you set yourself these ridiculous tasks. You know, you think as if I haven't got enough to do, write a book, I kind of put a Krypton factor assault course in my head as well. Because you want to make it interesting for you to write as well as for the readers to read. So that's what it's about. It's about two young people, early 30s, who lose their partners, who meet someone else, but they can't be together. But destiny's saying that they should be. So what happens?
Well, it's a very complex plot with lots of different relationships and lots of different reasons for them not to be together. And as it was coming to the end, there were various strands. It's like a very complicated French braid. And I was thinking, how's she done this? How did you keep it all in your head? Or are you a planner? Because I got the impression you just dive straight in there.
I do dive straight in. I wish I could. You know, some of my best friends like Catherine Isaac, etc., you know, they plot everything before they go in. And what am I? I've just written book 18, and I have tried every single time except for the last few to plot. And I don't know. I can't do it. I just cannot do it. I've got all the post-it notes. I've got the grids. Can't do it. So I just write and see where it takes me. And as I'm writing the first draft, which is always crapper than crap, but it's so much easier to pat everything into shape once you've got a big mound of material. And as I'm writing, sometimes it's as if you're a conduit for something else, because there's a voice going, oh, well, that bit would tie up with that bit and that bit. And I make little notes. And somehow, just somehow, it manages. It's a good analogy, that one about the plait. It's like somebody not knowing how to do it. And you think, well, I'll just have a go. And somehow you just manage to plait all the bits in. Somehow, I don't know how it happens. Because every time I try and write a book, I think I'm going to write the process now of how I do it. And then I get caught up in something and just write it and think, oh, I'll do it next time. So I must do it. But, you know, I just can't do it. I wish I could. But yes, they are very good. And every time I think I'm going to do a simpler one this time. And it doesn't work out like that. Somebody else drifts in and I have to try and weave them into the plot as well. But
I'm trying to be very careful and not give away any spoilers, because it is such a great story. But there was one bit which I thought, that's brilliant, she must have planned that. And it's the passport drawer, Laurie's kitchen odds and sods drawer, which comes to the rescue in the end.
Yes.
Was that planned, or was that one of those just divine moments that pop in your head as you're writing?
No, it wasn't planned. The passport, at the beginning, she has this drawer, because that came from a piece of advice, you know, about if you go on holiday, always have a spare purse inside with about a fiver in it, etc. And I've got, you know, well, burglars come in. I've got a drawer now with a couple of old things in it, just in case. And so that went in. But sometimes you wonder if there's something going on in the background that says, just put that in there. We'll do something with it later if we can work out how to do it. So it just felt right to put it in, and I thought maybe there's something in here that I could use later on. If not, but I think I happen to think that it was a magic fairy saying, no, put that in there. We can use it later. But it was a feasible thing that she'd got this drawer full of stuff. Just that if burglars came in, they'd take stuff out of there and then run off later on and take that and be satisfied with that. I think more and more people are hiding a false purse on them and things these days, just in case. Sad, isn't it, really? But yes. But so yes and no is the answer. Okay. Sorry, I hope you don't.
Well, I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was very clever.
Thank you very much. Then, of course, it was all plotted right from the off.
So you mentioned Molly's tea shop. Now, I haven't read all of your books, but so I didn't know Molly, but she's obviously appeared in a previous book. Did she have a book of her own, or was she just another minor character?
She was a character. It was actually my mother-in-law and father-in-law called Molly and Harvey, and Harvey said to me one day, "You never get Harveys and Mollys in books." So I said, I will write a book with a Molly and a Harvey in it, a married couple. And so I was writing a book at the time called The Tea Shop on the Corner, which had as usual, quite a sturdy cast of characters. And these two were pensioners in it, and they started to take over the whole book, and which was fine. I just rolled with it, and so when I'd resolved I'd never had any plans to revisit it again. It was a kind of sealed box with a ribbon on it, as far as I was concerned. But when I came to write My One True North, I wanted a tea shop in it, and it made perfect sense for me to go back to this tea shop and for it to be run by this old lady who had got a new lease of life at the end of a tea shop on the corner. So it just fitted in perfectly. And I picked her up again and ran with her, which was lovely. It was like meeting my old friends again.
You do quite often use characters from other books, not in major roles, but in minor roles. Is that deliberate, and do readers like that?
It was always deliberate. I nicked it from Stephen King because he would mention characters from Derry in his books, and I was fascinated. It was like, oh God, they're still around. They're still, you know, and it was like a link back to another book. And if you'd read that, it was something special for you. So it was always going to happen with every single book. And even right from the beginning, I was popping little characters in the books that I would pick up later on. And so if you don't need to have read other books for these characters to make any difference to your present reading, but it's always a bit extra for readers who have read all the books. Some characters started off as throwaways, you know, as vehicles, not particularly nice characters. I think of one is a woman called Doreen in Here Come the Girls. But by the end of the book, I was so interested in this minor character, and I wanted her to have the happy ending she probably didn't deserve when I was writing her at the beginning. And she's cropped up over and over, and I love it. But it's not, those ones aren't planned. There's some around the books that I do plan to put back in again, but others, by the time I've written them, they become so real that I want to bring them into other books, and so I do, you know, and I love that. I love bringing them again. It's also nice, I think, for readers to think, oh, they're all right, they're okay, they're still together, they're still happy, blah blah. And it just, all it takes is a line, a little cameo to have a massive effect. It's like dropping a stone into a pebble for readers. So yes, it was always the plan. Thank you, Stephen King.
Well, I do the same, but I came a cropper last time because I inadvertently made a minor character, and I'd called him Nick, which is my husband's name. And then I decided that actually he should have his own story. And normally I avoid putting my family names in books like The Plague, because in case anyone says, oh, it's just like so-and-so. And I ended up writing a whole book about a character called Nick, which wasn't intended at all, but just because, like you, I put this little cameo in and then ended up giving him his own book later on. So how do you have a spreadsheet? You keep track of them all, or is it all here?
It's all up here, but as you know, if you do this, it gets harder and harder. And I did start writing an anthology, a kind of dictionary of all the characters. And when I've got time, I will carry on doing this, because I mean, I'm 18 books in now, and going back through all the and it was always the plan to do this. I should have done it right from the off, really. But you have to remember that time goes on, and in My One True North, excuse me, the characters at the end that go on the cruise are from another book called Here Come the Girls, and it was always my plan to put them in, and they were, you know, sorry, yes, that's right, Here Come the Girls. But of course, when Here Come the Girls were written, they were all going on their 40th birthday trips. So I've had to calculate that actually now they're in their, you know, it's their 50th trip. Likewise with Mother of All Christmases, I was always going to bring the 3 women from the Yorkshire Pudding Club back, but they were on the 40 when they had their kids, and I was going to have them having more kids, but they're all going through the menopause. So you have to remember, and it gets harder and harder. So really, I either need to stop doing it, or to start, you know, running an actual spreadsheet of what they're doing, where they are, how old they are, how many kids they've got, which will be a nightmare to go back through all the books because of all the subsidiary characters, little characters that just make an appearance in one book that sometimes I do bring back in later books. But what a mammoth task I've set for myself. So don't be too clever, because it doesn't always pay off. I mean, I have loved it. And so far, touch wood, I haven't dropped myself in it, I don't think.
I think it really has paid off, because when I listened to One True North, the three ladies on the cruise ship, who are the friends you're talking about, I haven't read that book, but as soon as they appeared, their friendship was so clear, and they were such strong characters, even though they had a minor role. And now you say they're characters from another book, they were just so well formed. It's really clear that they had a life before, and that comes across really well.
I think the trick is really to write the book so that people don't need to have read another book before they read that one. It's a bit of a cheat, really, if you do that. It's kind of, well, you know, I'm going to put your enjoyment on hold because you need to go back and read this book first. And that would annoy me as a reader. So I try to write the books as if it doesn't matter if this is your first book of mine that you've picked up, it doesn't matter. And if you've read the book that it ties into, well, all the better. You'll know the backstory of them. I think, you know, you don't want to annoy your readers. You want to make sure that they can come straight into the story. So hopefully I've done that all right.
No, you did. It was brilliant. That's what the point I was trying to make was, they were such great characters. It didn't occur to me they'd been in a different book until you just said.
Oh, thank you.
They kind of leapt off the page with a real intimacy between them that was lovely.
Thank you.
The other thing about you is you're multi-talented. I've had lots of different jobs, but one of them that intrigues me is your copywriting and poem writing for greetings cards. And in One True North, there are a lot of poems and lines, and I think I did pick up the W.H. Auden one, but did you write the other poems yourself?
Yes, I do. I started writing them because, as you know, to quote pieces of poetry or lines from can be horribly expensive. In White Wedding, I kind of was in talks with the Billy Idol's management because I wanted to say it's a nice day for a white wedding, and that would have cost me, and this was bargain basement price because they wanted me to use it, £6,000 for every 30,000 run of books, and the initial run was 60-odd thousand, and that would have come out of my own pocket. Now, for the sake of it's a nice day for a white wedding, I thought it would be nice, but it's not, you know, it's not 12,000 quid nice. So I started writing poems, attributing them to a woman called Linda Flowers, who doesn't exist, it's me. But I always thought it looked nice with a poet's name on the back. I've had to come clean because a lot of people have written and said, we can't find Linda Flowers, where's she come from? So, which is nice. She could be a regular on the poetry circuit soon. But it was just really, I just wrote them to save myself a bit of brass, really, and the quotes, and because it's just too expensive. And if you can write them yourself, then why not? And I enjoy writing them as well. I enjoy writing stuff like that, little quotes and things.
Oh, the poems in One True North are absolutely beautiful, really lovely.
Thank you very much.
Oh, so one of my favourite things about your books is your villains. You write really lovely villains.
Love writing the villains.
And there were
sorry.
There were quite a few in my One True North.
Yes, there were. But I mean, it's like somebody once described to me about the pantomime. They say, nobody goes for Cinderella, do they? They all go to see the Ugly Sisters, you know. And as writers, you know yourself, the villains are where we can really put meat and two veg in there, you know. And we sometimes the characters, like, you know, certainly in things like The Queen of Wishful Thinking, that my lead characters are very boring in the nice way. They're just nice people. There's not a lot to them. They're just nice. They're just lovely people that you'd like to have as a neighbour or whatever, but not necessarily all nice people have a great deal of interest around them. They don't need it. But the villains, you can really, you know, really put some vitriol and therapy into all your villains. And yes, there were, and you know, they're not all good and bad. You know, there's a woman in there, Rhea, who's a bit, I don't know, she's a bit, what is she, Rhea? Insipid, is she a villain? She's not great. She's neither one or the other. But of course, there's a guy at the end who is borderline sociopath. He's a control freak, and there are so many of them around. I mean, I get a lot of letters from ladies who, quite sadly, have had these men in their lives, and women sometimes. I get letters about women who have destroyed their lives, who have walked in and nicked their husbands. And so the villains really do capture, I think, a nice snapshot of humanity, if humanity is the right word. There are these people working around. I've met quite a lot of them, which is why my writing on them is very informed. But I love writing a good meaty villain.
Yes, because you really put some of your heroines through jeopardy. I remember poor Grace, I think it was, being tied to the table leg for 24 hours by her slightly off his rocker husband.
But you know, a control freak. People don't like being contested, and when the whole order of their controlled worlds is threatened, then they can't cope. They go loop. And yes, he was a particularly horrible man. Loved him, loved writing him. It was brilliant to write. But these men do exist, and these women do exist. You know, I've in Birds and the Bees, I've got a woman in there called Jo McLean who comes back in another book, and the amount of women that I've had write to me and said, this happened to us. This was my husband's first wife. Or even women saying, how do you know my daughter-in-law? So there's obviously some strange relationships going around. But yes, the women are it's not just the prerequisite of men to be nasty. Some of the women that I've written are worse, far worse than the men. And when they betray a woman friend, I think it feels worse.
I mean, you do get a real balance of light and shade in your books. I mean, on the one part that, laugh out loud. I mean, I've just started listening to An Autumn Affair. I'm only one chapter in and I've been sniggering the whole way through. Okay. So you write some very funny lines, but it's balanced by these very dark characters who do unkind things to people. So, but you still manage to balance it all really well, which I think is why your books are such a success, because they haven't, on the surface, they're very jolly stories, but they have an awful lot of depth in them. And I think that's probably why you've got such a legend of fans.
Yeah, but I'm still dismissed as a light read because I have a happy ending. You know, it's bonkers, isn't it? You think I've got sort of domestic abuse in here. There's rape in here, date rape. There's alcoholism, but you're classed as a light read because you're a woman who writes commercial fiction. Interestingly enough, I will just make this point to you. And I hadn't noticed it, but I'm working with a copy editor at the moment on my Christmas book, and there's no villain in it. And I didn't realise at all until she mentioned it, there's no villain in it. So it is possible to write a book with no villain in, and that was not conscious at all. And that's only in the last week that I've realised that there's no villain in my book. That's
interesting. So I was about to ask, what your next project?
Well, I finished I'm just about to finish. I'm just the last week because it's going to typeset my Christmas book, which is coming out in October. I wish it could be Christmas every day. And then my next book after that, I've just written about a paragraph just to break that sea of white. And that I will be starting in the next couple of weeks. That doesn't have to be in till January. So I kind of can just throttle back a bit and take my pace with this. It's been quite a concentrated couple of years, you know, Christmas book, a summer book, then we squeezed in the quick reads. And then you've got things going on in your personal life as well, where, as you know, as a novelist sometimes, that whatever happens in your personal life, that book has got to be written. Otherwise it gets put off for another year, and we've all got mortgages to pay and things like that. And so you kind of, sometimes you just wonder how you do it, but you manage mostly to do what you have to do when there's a deadline coming up, etc. So I can throttle back, and goodness knows if I'll be able to work part-time, but I will try. I've just been, I just got another deal for 2 books, and for once I actually know what those 2 books are going to be about. Obviously I've not planned them, so I just need to get the first draft down by the end of Christmas.
So my final question is, all your books are very different, very original. So where do you get your ideas from? Because you have covered a huge range of subjects just in the few books I've read. And there are 18 out there, so
bonkers, isn't it? I mean, it gets harder, doesn't it? Because the more your readership increases, the more that your readers kind of want the same flavour of you. But at the same time, you don't want to produce something which is the same as everything else. So you're treading a fine line of trying to find something which is the same and yet different. It can come from anywhere. Ideas can just, they're everywhere. For instance, you know, sometimes it can be triggered off by a newspaper report, like Perfectly Imperfect Woman came from a story in the Yorkshire Post about a whole village that came up for sale for £20 million a couple of years ago. And there, I read that story and thought, whoa, there's my story. Sometimes it can be a character, like a conversation with my ex-editor about what is going on behind Melania Trump's eyes. And that just spawned Magnificent Mrs Mayhew. As soon as she said that, I had this vision of this woman, very beautiful woman, who is absolutely dragged over the coals, quite unfairly so, by the press because of her connections with a more famous other half. But she's got to bear all this, people ripping into her, analysing every single nuance on her face and everything she wears and where she has her hair done, every single thing. Other things can be slightly autobiographical. The Yorkshire Pudding Club came from me being pregnant at the same time as 2 of my pals, and all of us kind of heading very, very close to 40, you know, older mums for the first time. So it can come from anywhere. Sometimes you just hear something and it's as if someone has rubbed a yellow highlighter over it and you think, that's useful, I'll store it. And I don't know what part of my brain picks these things out. I can read something in a paper, the one that I'm going to set off writing now, is again a bit autobiographical, about myself having to look after children and also having to look after elderly parents. But yet the elderly parents are, you know, kind of almost invisible to them. All they bother about is, oh, yeah, our lovely grandchildren, and you're in the middle, and you can't do anything right for them, and you can't do anything right for them. I mean, they're all lovely, you know, but do you know what I mean? It's that kind of sandwich generation that you're stressed, you're having to look after the older ones and the younger ones, and so that is autobiographical. But it comes from anywhere. Ideas can come from anywhere. You know, when anybody says, I don't know what you think to write about, I'm fending off ideas, you know, they're everywhere, but you do have to lift the scales from your eyes and see them. And that's the trick of seeing what is in front of your face that you can write about.
Brilliant. Well, good luck with the book.
Thank you very much.
It's out a week on Thursday, you said?
Yes, the 23rd. Yes.
And all I can say is it's a very good read. Heartwarming, funny, sad, makes you cry a little bit, but puts a big smile on your face, and it is a lovely book. So thank you very much for speaking to us today, Millie.
It's been lovely to see you again.
Next time I hope we can be in a bar in a hotel having a few drinks.
Oh, me too, honestly. You know, when we moaned about normal before, wouldn't we just all love to get back to that? You know, just love to. The simple things that we all took for granted will be huge things in time to come. So I hope we're all safe and well and can enjoy those pleasures.
Thanks very much, Millie.
Thank you.
Massive thanks to Jules and to Millie for that wonderful interview. You can buy My One True North from our bookshop. Give us a call, 01442 827 653. You can also get all of Millie's other books and, dare I say, Jules Wake and Julie Kaplan, who she writes under as well. So all those books are available from our bookshop. All the other purchase blurb is available in the text below this video. And we've got so many more interviews to follow, so do watch this space and subscribe to our YouTube channel.